Last week, incoming Texas Congressman Brandon Gill came on the show and explained how he would measure his success on Capitol Hill. Take a look.
My biggest priority is going to be on the border. I think in some ways I could measure my personal success numerically, and it's based on the number of illegal aliens that get deported over the next 2 years in my first Congress. That's how I'm going to measure success.
And while speaking at the New York Young Republican Club Gala, Gill explained why he has no interest in working with his soon-to-be Democratic colleagues.
I don't know about y'all, but I have no interest in bipartisanship after what they've done to our country. If Democrats want to vote for our bills, then they can do that. But there are bills because we have a mandate now.
I am so energized, and here to break it all down for us is Kingsley Wilson. She runs the digital media and strategic communications for the Center for Renewing America. So Kingsley, thanks so much for joining the show. And I want to know, is this the kind of energy that we're going to see from the new MAGA representatives heading to D.C.?
I think 100%. You could hear the crowd there. They were just as energized as you were listening to that clip. I was in the crowd that evening, and I can tell you the energy was palpable. It was off the charts. Congressman Gill is going to be a fantastic representative, not just for Texans, but I think for the entire country and for young conservatives in particular. He's freshman class president. He's got a lot of MAGA youthful spirit, and he's really going to focus on the issues that matter. In D.C., here in the swamp, when you hear bipartisanship, that is uniparty talking code for uniparty rule and for fighting for DC interests instead of your interests. For too long, Republicans on the campaign trail, they've talked, MAGA Republican talkers, but then they've stabbed their own constituents in the back when they get to Washington, D.C. Brandon Gill is someone who's going to pull back that curtain on the DC cartel and all their dirty dealings, and he is going to fight for the American people. We can't have 4 more years of bipartisanship for the sake of bipartisanship. Congressman-elect Gill's absolutely correct. We have a mandate from the American people. On November 5th, we won the Electoral College and we won the popular vote. The American people are clamoring for the Trump agenda. And if we don't get that done, we would be subverting the will of the American people. So I hope to see all Republicans in Congress bring that same spirit that Congressman Gill did, just as he spoke to the New York Young Republicans there.
Kingsley, I couldn't agree more about some of this. I mean, what's really interesting is that when they say bipartisanship, there's getting things done because you have to get things done, and there's another side and you have to confront it and wrangle and wrestle and argue. And then there's like the good feeling that establishment types seem to get from, kowtowing to the other side. And oh, good, I got a pat in the head from my enemies. It's really disgusting, when you think about it. But let's think about this. So two sort of objections or questions from the cynical side of the crowd. One would be, okay, you guys, you all love Brandon. He was on the show when he said that about his measure of success. I almost dropped some language in support of him that I wouldn't normally be tempted to drop on a show. It was so amazing. But is he really representative of the people coming in first? Does he represent this wave? And then second, what about the obvious objection of, every, crusty establishment type throughout the country, which is like, that sounds really good, but, this is just immaturity, and you're going to have to be bipartisan if you want to get things done?
I've already, to your latter point there, I think we've already started to see this with President Trump's cabinet picks, right? We saw a little bit of hesitation from senators. They weren't sure about some of these folks. We heard, inexperience thrown around, which really just means that, they're not your typical Beltway elites, which the American people and the average voter, I think, finds rather refreshing. But to the senators and lobbyists here in D.C., that's cause for alarm. But I think, even they have come around and really started to rally behind these individuals that President Trump has selected because they're feeling the heat from their constituents. So I think if, senators and congressmen don't kind of adopt this mentality that Congressman Gill was really exemplifying there, they're going to get lit up by their constituents and their voters are going to be mad. Because if Trump has done anything for the Republican Party, I think he has taught them who is in charge, right? You don't work for the DC special interests. You don't work for lobbyists or big corporations like Boeing. You work for the American people. And that, at the end of the day, is what President Trump is fighting for, a working class party that serves those outside the Beltway American families who are truly the backbone of this entire nation and this entire economy. So I think we're going to see a lot more people adopt Congressman Gill's approach, because if they don't, they're going to have hell to pay. That is absolutely for certain.
We certainly hope that's the case. But when they do eventually have to go over to the other side of the aisle, we didn't know if we were going to see the youth, or we'll just call it experience, over there in D.C., because AOC lost her bid to become the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee to her opponent, Congressman Jerry Connolly. So what does this say now about the direction that the Democrats want to go in?
I think the Democrat Party is really kind of going to have an internal crisis that they're going to have to work out in these next few months, right? They were so out of touch with the average voter. They were, not going on the types of podcasts that President Trump was on the campaign trail, for instance. And they were just unable to kind of break through. They focused on issues like transgender care for illegals and for prison inmates. Well, President Trump was out there talking about ending endless wars, gas prices, affordable groceries, securing the border, deporting illegals who break our laws. Those were the issues that resonated with voters. And I think Democrats are really kind of going into apoplexy. They're trying to figure out which way to turn. We saw Jen Psaki just days after the election saying they should actually double down on the transgender just madness and rhetoric. So I think we're going to see a push and pull here between more, establishment Democrats and then, some of the more radical fringe elements of their party, like AOC. There's going to be a blood battle between these two camps. And I certainly hope to see the radicals win out, because I think they're absolutely easier for us to beat in years to come.
So let's talk about Jasmine Crockett. The voters overall, chose Trump over Harris, obviously, for economic and immigration policies, many other reasons. But this woman out of Texas has a different explanation. Jill and I were talking about this yesterday. You've seen this, right? She claims that minorities voted for Donald Trump because of, quote, a slave mentality in an interview with Vanity Fair. At first, Trump was literally Hitler, right? We heard that every day for a long time, many years. And now he won because of the slave mentality. Help us make sense of this. I mean, I thought maybe some of this stuff would go away, but maybe it's coming back. I mean, what do you think?
I think it's, hard to teach an old dog new tricks. We're going to see Democrats just continue to rely on this progressive worldview that they have pushed on the American public and tried to indoctrinate basically in every institution and facet of government, right? They control the mainstream media. They control different colleges and universities, and they've been pushing this so aggressively. But what we saw on November 5th was a wholesale rejection of all of this madness. I think your average person is so sick and tired of CRT and DEI. They want to go back to the American ideal of meritocracy, and they want people to be judged based on the content of their character instead of the color of their skin. And they want to uplift people and promote people who are actually talented and who are deserving of such jobs, right? Not just hiring someone because they're a woman or because they're gay. That's absolutely ridiculous. So, it's offensive to see Democrats, I think, put people into these boxes and say that just because someone is, Hispanic or African American, they can't support President Trump. In fact, I think we saw a large coalition of minority Americans supporting President Trump. He did that fantastic rally in the Bronx where, Americans from all walks of life came out in support of him. He is a president who's truly going to be a uniter and is going to fight for all Americans, right? A rising tide lifts all boats. And I think the next 4 years of President Trump's successes are going to uplift and embolden all Americans and truly make their lives great again. So I'm excited to see that. This Jasmine Crockett stuff is just as noisy as when she's, screeching and howling in the Oversight Committee hearings. It's just noise, not signal. We don't need to pay any heed to it.
Yeah, and Kingsley, when you were talking, it just made me think of how Trump and Vance would talk about the American dream and bringing it back. And it's just like, hey, common sense is going to be here to stay. Kingsley, thanks so much for joining us today.